What's up, everybody? Hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. Hope you all had a great Black Friday. Today is Cyber Monday. In the comments section, let me know, what deals you picked up for yourselves on Black Friday, Cyber Monday. A lot of stores, a couple of days before Black Friday, were offering you those sales. Me, and I know a few people asked last minute, I picked up mostly nutritional and diet items, to basically stock up for the next 6 months or so. Because I'm on a keto diet, which I know you are already aware, a lot of you. And there are some special supplements that you take to basically keep your salts up and electrolytes and things, and that can add up. And when you get stores out there offering, 50% off, 65% off, and it's legit 65% off, you try to stock up as much as you can. So that's pretty much. I didn't buy no electronics, unfortunately. Didn't buy any clothes. Mostly it was diet supplements. Still trying to lose weight. I mean, it's a lifetime battle for yours truly. What I weigh now is what I weighed in freshman year of high school. I kid you not. One day I'm going to put online my high school video that I told you all about. Very, very strange video that I wasn't even aware existed until about 10 years ago. And I graduated in the late 80s. And for those that don't know the story, about 10 years ago, I started talking to a girl on social media, on Facebook, that I hadn't talked to since high school. And me in high school, I was very, very shy. I'm still shy in a lot of ways, even though a lot of you would not believe that. But I was very, very shy, and I had a couple opportunities as a teenager to basically, trust me, I wasn't the ladies' man either. But I had a couple opportunities to basically hang out with girls, and I wimped out, to say it nicely. The most infamous story that I know a lot of you are aware of on YouTube, on Patreon, And the only reason why I haven't said it on YouTube yet is because a lot of you haven't asked me, and some of this might be boring, but some of you I think will appreciate this story. I was 15 years old, and it was this girl, Lisa, that I went to school with, that, she's Italian, very, very short, really, really cute. And, the funny thing is, if you remember the picture that I posted not too long ago of me squirting the water gun in somebody's face when I was in high school, if you look at the girl sitting at the desk right behind me, that's the girl. And, my friends had told me that, oh, she likes you. Why don't you talk to her? She likes you. And I was like, yeah. But I was just shy. I wouldn't admit it. And this is a true story, everyone. This is something you just don't make up. Believe me. I was on the 88 Special, which is a bus that takes you from St. Francis Prep High School in Fresh Meadows, Queens, all the way to the Queens Center Mall in right around Kew Gardens, New York. It's about a 45-minute drive without traffic. So we're on the bus going home, and I had to stand up because there were no seats available. So, at the time, and I haven't been on a bus I actually went on the express bus when I went to see the Greg Gutfeld show. I was a guest back in November. But other than that, as far as regular buses, I haven't been on one in probably 2 decades. And back then, you had either the metal handles that you could hold on top like this, or they would have a metal bar. It almost looked like a stripper pole that would be randomly maybe 2-3 areas on the bus. It would go from the ceiling all the way to the floor. And you could hold on to that as well. Maybe you're too short, and I'm dead serious. Maybe you're too short and you can't hold that high. So I remember being on this bus, and this girl Lisa was standing right next to me, and I have my hand on the metal, rod or whatever you want to call it, just to hold on while we're riding on the bus. We hit a bump, and as I'm holding it, this is probably, I don't have 2 right hands, so it's very hard for me to try to show you, but I'm holding on to the handle, the metal rod. And when we hit the bump, she moved, and I looked in the corner of my eye, and her hand landed right on top of mine. And I froze like you wouldn't believe. Her hand was on top of my hand for about a good 10 seconds. And, I'm like thinking, should I look over? Should I say hi? Should I do this? And I just no-sold it like a moron. I no-sold it. And, sure enough, she pulls her hand away and she puts her hand like where she was before. And I blew it. I absolutely blew it. So I'm not going to lie to you. About 10 years ago, we started talking on Facebook because I hadn't seen her since high school. And we were chatting and having some conversation. And I said, look, I got to ask you an honest question. I said, do you remember the bus ride going to, Queen Center Mall one time where we kind of bumped into each other? And she's like, yeah, I remember that time. I was like, did you intentionally put your hand on mine? And she's like, yeah. And you didn't do nothing. And I felt like an idiot. Now, for all of you, you're going to say, hey, DT, how come you didn't hook up with her now? Well, she has 2 kids now. She was divorced. She doesn't look like she did in the late 80s. But I still, created a nice friendship with her. So anyway, long story short, about a week or 2 after we reconnected, she said to me, she goes, wow, she says, I was looking at the graduation tape that, that St. Francis Prep did, and you're hilarious with the chair. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she's like, you don't remember the high school video? I said, I don't know about any high school video. And she's like, oh my God. She says it was for sale. Anybody in senior year could have bought the high school video. It was a culmination of the last 4 years. Part of it is me DJing the overnight dance-a-thon to raise money for charity. You see me like this, going like this. I was terrible. But she said to me, she says, and I have the tape now. Because she sent it to me and she only had the VHS tape and she wanted it digitized. So I had her send the tape to me and I put it on DVD for her and I made a couple of copies for myself. But when I graduated high school, and I don't remember this, when everybody walked out of the building, they have the video going and it's videotaping everybody leaving the building right after they graduated. And when you see me, for some reason, I walked out with the folding chair. Nobody else in my graduation class of about 700 walked out with a chair. I don't know if it was just a premonition of wrestling events years later that you go for a pay-per-view and you could take home the chair. I took the chair. I have no idea what I did with it. I don't remember it at all, but it's hilarious. It's hilarious. I promise you all, I will put the video up. And you'll see it, and you're gonna. First of all, you'll laugh because you'll see me from the late '80s. But number 2, you see everybody walking out, everybody's happy in a sense. You see me like a goof walking out with a folding chair. Nobody stopped me either. So anyway, how we even got on that, I have no idea. But I have a lot of questions to get into from all of you. I want to thank you for doing that. Once again, in the comment section, let me know what you picked up for, sales this week. Is it gifts for friends and family? Is it something that you could use, electronics, clothes? Let me know. Very curious to see what you all picked up. Now, one thing I need to remind a few people out there, and look, yes, the immature Don Tony inside of me giggles when it happens, but in all reality, I don't want to see them wasting their time either. But, we do have a handful of people that unfortunately were blocked on this YouTube channel for, just instigating or, just absolute denial about changes that have happened to shows. And some people have been blocked. And in YouTube, it's not actually a block. It's called the shadow ban. And what that means is that they could type, they could curse me out, they could ask questions for the shows, they could comment about wrestling. And when they're shadow banned, the only person that could see what they wrote are themselves. And I said I had done this twice before. What I would do, because I can't see the comments either, what I would do in the past is after a month or 2, I would unblock them for a second, see what they posted, and then I block them again. So this way they're shadow banned. So the bottom line is, if I don't answer your question on these episodes, 99.9% of the reason is because you are shadow banned. It is not because I forgot your question. So if anybody is shadow banned and they feel that it's a mistake or they shouldn't have been, email me, dontony@dontony.com. I mean, for a little while, I had a couple of people moderating my channel. Right now, Mish of Wrestling Soup and Breakfast Soup is the only guy that moderates other than yours truly. So in the past, maybe another moderator blocked someone or shadow banned someone that I'm not aware of. So if anybody feels that they might have been shadow banned, send me an email and I'll check it out. And look, and if you should have been shadow banned, then tell me why you shouldn't, and I'll lift it. I don't mind. We're supposed to be one big family over here. You know, and the object of this channel is obviously to talk about wrestling, talk about some real life stuff mixed in as well. But we're supposed to be here having a good time, a couple of laughs. You know, no hatred, no animosity. Sure, we'll criticize. Sure, we will insult from time to time. But the overall atmosphere of this channel is supposed to be positive. So, but anyway, let's get into your questions. And by the way, I want to apologize for being a week late. For those that aren't aware, I've been on vacation the last 5 days. Physically, I'm back, but emotionally, I'm not. I got back late last night. I actually was supposed to not come home until tonight, and it was going to really cut it close if I was going to do Breakfast Soup Raw tonight with Mish. But we decided to come home last night because the weather was supposed to be bad today, and it is horrible outside right now. Internet has not gone down, but wind, rain, just horrible weather. And my building complex is notorious. When you get these rain-soaked, storms all day long, for some reason it saturates the cables and internet goes out for hours at a time. So I'm crossing fingers. We don't have any power outages, no internet outages. Hopefully nobody bugs me on the phone while we're doing this. And I know I could just put everything on silent, but it is right now only 2:45 in the afternoon. I'm on my lunch hour, and the customer may call in with something very, very important. So let's go through your questions. I will do the next one in 2 weeks, and I will put up a separate clip where you could post your questions. So please don't post it on this one. If you want to post feedback to this episode, by all means, but I will post another clip for where you could post your questions for the next show. So in no particular order, let's get into these. And one other thing I also need to remind everyone, when you send in questions for the shows, my biggest request, as always, is keep the questions easy, short, to the point, something that doesn't require me to research. In fact, one I'm going to get into almost immediately. I'm not going back 32 years or 30 years of Survivor Series and look at event, match. I mean, something comes to mind, I'll get into it. But just keep in mind, a lot of people send in questions, and I can't spend 5-10 minutes on one person. I may tell a story from time to time that will take a little bit of time that I think you'll all enjoy or maybe be interested in. But for the most part, just keep in mind that, we got to keep the show flowing. So I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, he almost skipped over my question. It's just these Q&As are meant to be, open for everybody. But at the same time, just keep the topics changing. So it just keeps everything, tight and fun and diverse. So let's get into Chris. On the old show, I had an intro with the David Otunga rap that I created. And after I was done, I said, that's the first verse. Did I ever come up with a second verse? Well, for those that don't remember, what was that? Breakfast with Blassie, right? That was part of the intro. With David Otunga, when he first started in WWE and really was not very good in the ring, I had done a rap once. I actually did my own beatbox, and I did a first verse. I think it went something like, they say it's mean to say you're green, but you gots to leave WWE. You're not equipped to be the shit, so stay at home and make my grits. That's the first verse. Yeah, I actually did come up with pretty much a second verse, but the thing is, I just never did the beat for it again. And, when you do it with an intro, you start doing really, really long verses. You can't have a 3-minute intro. But maybe I'll finish it one day. But the thing is, David Otunga, although not wrestling anymore, has done very well, mostly on the pre-shows for WWE. I mean, when they put him as a weekly commentator, it was not very good. I mean, I have brought up many times in the past, you could go back to pay-per-views where you need the commentators to make these matches come off as like the greatest in recent memory. And I pointed out Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre Survivor Series. Man, did Michael Cole the energy coming out of Michael Cole for that match was amazing. I mean, Michael Cole is always the big dog, but go back and watch that match again, and I don't know what it was. I don't know if Michael Cole was on some type of nutritional speed, legal speed, or maybe he had like 10 Red Bulls, but the energy was incredible. But David Otunga was the complete opposite. You would have pay-per-views where JBL would be like, this match was unbelievable. And you'd have Michael Cole, someone else, and then David Otunga would be like, yeah, we got to see what happens next week, or wonder what the ramifications are going to be on Raw. And it was just like monotone, boring, dull. But I will tell you, he's done a guest spot on commentating once in a blue moon since. He's gotten much better. He fits in perfect for the pre-shows, for the pay-per-views. And I like David Otunga. There was one point I absolutely could not stand him, but I like David Otunga now. But and to be honest with you, that's probably the biggest subconscious reason as to why I don't want to do the second verse, is because the guy has gotten better. It fit at the time. I don't think it fits now. Michael Gonzalez. Favorite Survivor Series, best Survivor Series, worst Survivor Series, most disappointing Survivor Series. All right, this kind of falls into what I said before. Look, this is not a cop-out. I promise you it's not a cop-out. I mean, some Survivor Series matches didn't seem to make sense. You look at the Survivor Series team, the $1 Million team, when Undertaker made his debut. You look at it and, you got an unknown at the time, which is The Undertaker. You got Greg Valentine with black hair, and this is way past his prime. That team really didn't amount to much of anything. You've had some other oddball teams in the past. I remember Roddy Piper actually was on a Survivor Series team with Jimmy Snuka. That was a little bit still odd because I always remember their feud from 1984, I believe it was. So, but honestly, I always liked Survivor Series. And it's one of those pay-per-views, just like the Royal Rumble, man. I mean, it's one of those pay-per-views you really gotta screw up to screw up. You know what I mean? Like, those pay-per-views usually work out themselves. And even the last Survivor Series that we had. And yeah, you look back on it and it feels like it was focused more on celebrating Undertaker's career than anything else. The lead up to Survivor Series was pathetic. To not have people invading both brands and causing chaos like Retribution did early on. And I brought it up a few times over the last month and a half. It wasn't too long ago that Kurt Angle was on that walkie-talkie. It's on! They're here! Security! I mean, they didn't do any of that this year. And no, you don't blame it on COVID, because everybody is wrestling around people and everybody supposedly has been tested, and that's a cop-out excuse. That's a cop-out excuse. But, as far as favorite Survivor Series, look, there's been a couple of matches over the years. My most infamous one is obviously the Montreal Screwjob, and somebody asks later on, my favorite rivalry of all time. And, just to answer that person's question, I'll shout them out later on. But my favorite rivalry all time, and it's very difficult for me to, narrow it down to one. So if I do WWE, WCW, ECW, if you want to do those three, my favorite ECW rivalry of all time was Terry Funk and Mick Foley, Cactus Jack. By far, my favorite rivalry. Some people might have RVD and Sabu. Some people may have Raven and Tommy Dreamer. Some people may have others. For me, Cactus Jack and Terry Funk, because it bled over into Japan. It actually, they teased it a little bit in WWF after the fact, once Mick Foley was a full-timer in WWF. But that feud in ECW was my favorite. The branding iron, the flaming branding iron, Funk in a box, November to Remember 1995, Dreamer and Funk versus Raven and Cactus Jack. That was the first weapons match that I just absolutely watched over and over and over and over. I can't tell you how many times I watched that match over and over. And yes, I had seen weapons matches before that, but that was the first one where you use a Nintendo, a cheese grater. It was just everything about it that I absolutely loved. In WCW, it probably comes down to Sting and Ric Flair, because their rivalry off and on went for decades. But WWE, it's probably going to be Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, because there was a lot of reality put in there as well. I've said this since 1997. We're approaching 24 years of me doing this. You want to make me feel older, you could say I'm in my fourth decade doing this. 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. But the reason why I say that is I remember going back to my hotline in 1997 when I started getting a little bit of traction and getting a little bit of popularity, and a lot of hotlines hated me, despised me, thought I was jealous, and I was a big prick back then. I might have been a boring prick, but I was still a prick back then. And there would always be feuds, hotline feuds. This person feuds with this person makes fun of this person, I make fun of this person. And I remember in 1997, late 97, saying on one of my hotline reports that a lot of people who tune into the hotlines find the hotline wars more entertaining than the wrestling storylines they see on TV, because it's real, because they like the reality part of it. And Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, to me, had a ton of reality put in there. We don't need to rehash it. The whole story between the two. They did not like each other. But so as far as best Survivor Series, 1997 will always stick out for me for that. There was so much tension. It's just incredible. And the funny thing about it is there was so much, and if you weren't a fan of wrestling in 97, it's really hard to recreate that. But because we knew Bret Hart was pretty much a lock to go to WCW, and that could be his last match, and because it was happening in Calgary, and because it was in Canada, and because it was everything surrounding it, and all the heat between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, and the stuff you heard from Meltzer and Dirt Sheets and other hotlines, it was just surreal. And to have the Montreal Screwjob end that match made it to a whole different, it was already on a different level. Even if Bret would have lost clean, even if Bret would have won and surrendered the belt, no matter any other outcome, it was already surreal and tense leading up to that. To have that kind of a screw job finish on top of it, it's like it was already nuclear, and it just brought it to a new level. So honestly, I don't have any bad Survivor Series. Like I said, there's been teams that have teamed up that have been kind of corny. We have had midgets. We've had, people team up that made no sense whatsoever. But you look back on them, they're fun. They're fun. You really gotta go out of your way to have a shitty Survivor Series. Look, good example. The last Survivor Series, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Mish thought I was on crack. A lot of you out there thought I was nuts. They're like, there was nothing that really stood out. Even the Undertaker's retirement was kind of crappy. It's just, for me, we're in COVID, so it's special circumstances. But, it's something that it's an annual tradition. And for me, the lead up to Survivor Series was much worse than Survivor Series itself. So I don't have a bad one. There's been better ones than others, but I don't have a bad one. Oh, what's up, Hulkster, brother? If he super chat, I actually answered this question for you on the last show. If he super chatted me, and would I promise him to donate half of it towards the casino being on vacation this weekend? If I hit, we split. Well, first of all, if I would have taken any of your money, I probably would have just said I lost it. But I actually did hit a little bit. My fiance did awesome. And she was rubbing it in my face all weekend. She never wins. She wins $5, $10 if she's lucky. And I'm not going to talk about it too much over here because we got so many questions to get into as well. But, I appreciate the offer. I thank you for that. You know that. But, I needed to get away. I needed to rest, needed to emotionally recharge a little bit. Plus, to make up the whole year that got screwed because of COVID. By now I should have been looking for, a place to possibly live and set up my wedding, and everything was thrown awry for a year. So, this past week was to make up for it. And, I had a good time. I was very, very careful. And I wore my mask. I kept social distance, kept sanitizing, cleaning my hands. I don't rub my face. And there was a few people online that really gave it to me, that, basically called me out for going on vacation in the middle of COVID. How could you even think about doing that? And I answered them the same way every time. I pay tribute to The Undertaker. I know that sounds pretty messed up, but again, you had a few people that traveled all the way to WWE in Florida to pay tribute to The Undertaker and then came all the way home. And they said that was okay for them. But then they did videos saying that we shouldn't be with our own family. Oh, but The Undertaker was a special occasion. Well, so is my relationship with my fiance. So is my parents. How dare you? How dare you, with a clear head, travel all the way to Florida? I don't care if it's The Undertaker's retirement. I don't care if it's The Undertaker's breaking his virginity. I don't care if The Undertaker got married again. I don't care if he had kids. I don't care if his kids had kids. You traveled on planes and went to hotels and went to a bar the night before with a clear head, and then you have the nerve to tell others not to spend time with friends and family? You gotta be kidding me, man. Who should be the first referee inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame if they pull the trigger? I would put Earl Hebner. I know that's probably not going to happen, but I think it should. I really do. I think, you put in Earl Hebner. If you want to diminish Earl Hebner's career, as far as WWE goes, put in both Hebners. Put in both. Because I think everybody would say, without trying to be disrespectful, they'd say Earl is 10 times better than Dave. So if you put the Hebners in together, you're either really elevating Dave or you're bringing down Earl. I would put Earl in. There's a few referees I would put in, but I honestly think Earl Hebner, all those memorable, I hated the windmill thing that he used to do. 1, 2, and then it would always stop at 2 3/4. I hated that. I hated it? Because he never did the windmill and count the 3. He'd never do the windmill to 3. And it really made it, not believable many times. And yes, the cat was let out of the bag many years before then. But still, when you're watching in suspension of disbelief, he does the windmill, he's not going to count the 3. And yes, it's very, very fast. But I would go Earl Hebner. Who's the more vital to WWF, WWE at the time? Hogan making wrestling mainstream in the 80s or the Austin era? Hogan. Not even a question. You know, Austin, obviously, tremendous. The storyline with him and McMahon to a different level. Attitude. There's so many variables that, you know, just took WWE financially to a whole new universe. But Hogan in the 80s, you know, if you remember the story of Vince and how he was able to fund WrestleMania 1, we would have maybe not had, you know, anywhere near that level. Hulkamania was something that, as being a wrestling fan since 1979 and enjoying different people over the years, Hulk Hogan bringing wrestling mainstream in the 80s is the reason that allowed, and it wasn't just Hulk, but for the most part, that allowed wrestling to keep going. And at the same time, though, you know, you needed that long-time babyface Hogan to make the NWO work by turning heel. You know, there's so many things. You can't just pick a certain period and say, that is because of that, is because of that, is because of that. No, it's just like, you know, you go through your life and you might meet someone and or something happens, and then you go, at some point you might say, you know, if this wouldn't have happened, this wouldn't have happened. And if I didn't do this, this wouldn't have happened. And you feel like things happen for a reason. I'm sure throughout your life, you, good or bad, you've probably said things happen for a reason. And I think it's the same here as well. You know, because remember, certain wrestlers and certain directions lead to certain decisions. And if Hogan wasn't there, maybe you don't lead to the decision of this. Maybe you don't lead to the decision of this. So, you know, Hogan in the 80s was much more important to wrestling. Much more important. Austin, financially, was more successful. But Hogan, as far as the business itself, much more important. Whether you like him or you don't like him, you can't take that away. So, King Bling Blah. With The Undertaker opening up and telling stories the past few months, what stories do I want him to talk about that he hasn't talked about yet? You know, man, it's hard to say. It really is. You know, he's not going to talk about Sarah, and he's not going to talk about certain things. You know, I think just seeing The Undertaker, you know, talking about wrestlers and pallbearer and growing up this and doing this and learning this, and when he first became champion, his thoughts of Hogan, and you know, like, I said many years ago that that WWE was doing a slow burn of domesticating The Undertaker. Anybody that has followed me for a very long time remembers that. I said that years ago. WWE was going to do the slow burn of domesticating The Undertaker, and it was going to be an extremely slow burn, and now that flame has really developed. So people that saw this a long time ago was preparing for this. You know, it's not on the same level, but when George the Animal Steel started talking all the time, you know, when you'd have other wrestlers, you know, go totally out of their character and just be regular people. You know, it's something that you never wanted to see because you always wanted to envision the character as being the person. But, you know, they are regular people behind it. And just because The Undertaker was his character for decades doesn't mean that there wasn't, you know, a Southern cool, you know, almost like biker guy, you know, in the background. So, you know, whatever he talks about, I appreciate it, and I'm enjoying it. I don't mind him being an extension of himself. You know, I don't know if he'll ever completely open up, you know, on some topics, yes, but this is something that I have emotionally prepared myself for many years, so I'm cool with it. Anthony Alston, Goodfellas is his favorite movie of all time, mine too. His second is Casino. And he just wanted to let me know that I never could get into casino like Goodfellas. Just like that one they just did, I can't remember, The Irishman, I did not like it at all. I wanted it to feel like Goodfellas so bad. And yes, it was not meant to be Goodfellas, but halfway through it, I said I couldn't enjoy it. And that was it. That was it. Goodfellas, because I know people over the years that fit some of those characters perfectly, because I have seen some people in real life and what is legit and what isn't. That was as close to reality that I have seen compared to other films. Casino, I thought, was a little bit too over the top. But, it's not a bad film. I mean, it's a very good film. But to me, it's not even close to being as good as Goodfellas. Joe Goodheart had a wrestling radio show in Philadelphia in the 80s, Inside Scoop, when there was no internet. He also owned Tri-State Wrestling Alliance, yes, TWA. Did I ever meet him? No, I never met him. I saw him a couple of times, but never walked up to him and said, hey, how's it going, this and that. Joel Goodheart, I'll be honest with you, it's a little bit disappointing that he doesn't get more credit for hardcore wrestling that led to ECW. When he had that TWA promotion in the early 90s, and that ultimately led to ECW, if you followed This Week in Wrestling History that I did for about 2 years, I talked about one of his cards. And you look at some of his early cards and you see Sandman on there, and you see Abdullah the Butcher on there, and you see The Sheik and Eddie Gilbert and Cactus Jack. He even booked Owen Hart one time. I forget who he faced. It was a Japanese wrestler, and Joe Goodheart spent a lot of money bringing his Japanese wrestler in. Joe Goodheart was everybody, obviously Paul Heyman is the godfather of hardcore wrestling, and what he did for ECW. But I tell you, Joel Goodheart should have gotten a hell of a lot more credit than he did. And in some cases, he's not even mentioned. And he was very, very instrumental and you look at some of the cards he did in Pennsylvania in like 91, 92, around that time, and you see 1,000 people, 1,200 people, 1,400 people. He was getting the ECW arena type crowds at those shows. Gets almost no play whatsoever. I did not listen to his show in the 80s. I don't even know if it was available in New York at the time. We had one late night wrestling show that was on AM FM radio. Was it something Summers? I can't remember his name right now, but it was on WFAN, and it used to be on late at night on the weekend, and I would enjoy a little bit of wrestling at that time. But Joe Goodheart never really, there's clips floating around online, and you could hear a little thing here and there, but for the most part, I heard of his radio show. I think Bill Apter might have covered it back then. I never really paid attention to it, but Bill Apter back then, I do remember him talking about his hotline. But Joel Goodheart is a name that if a lot of you out there aren't familiar with, go look him up and go look at the TWA promotion, Tri-State Wrestling Alliance, and see some of those cards that he did back then. I know there's a lot of people out there that are dying to get footage of some of those. I know the Owen Hart match is like legendary. So go check it out, seriously. Gary Vaughn, his college roommate, was from Brooklyn, and he's from Texas. He said he respected Texans because of the shared deep love for their stomping grounds as New York has. What is it about New York that I'll always love, even when I move? Toughness. There is a toughness that, and let me be straight up with all of you. I go to Connecticut. I just came back from there. And everybody is nice as can be. I talk to all walks of life. The woman who actually is transgender, who helped me build my heart-shaped roses last year when I proposed. She actually delivered us room service Friday night. And I didn't have my mask on. I had forgot to put the mask on. And when I opened the door, I said, oh, I forgot my mask. And she looked at me. She's like, oh, my God. She says, you're the one from last year that got engaged. I said, yeah. And my fiance came over, showed her the ring. And we were talking for a few minutes. And, you know, all walks of life. Everybody nice as hell. But New York, it's a toughness that is very hard to describe. And it's a shame because you have seen the toughness of the tough become weak because of COVID. And you would think like that is the time that you got to step up and show your toughness more than anything else. You know, my father, he's doing better now, and I thank you all for all your thoughts and prayers. That's one of the reasons. Somebody had said to me on Thursday, why are you going away? Your father's got pneumonia. And I'm like, yeah, because he's got pneumonia. He doesn't want anybody around him right now, you know? But the thing is that, you know, when you had COVID, you know, that is the time you get tested. In New York, everything is uber expensive. Sometimes you're out of work. Sometimes you're out of this, you're out of that. And being tough and being, you know, built strong, you know, prepares you indirectly for adversity. And I saw for the last 8 months people who you thought were tough. And then you realize that for many, many years, they were just setting up or convincing themselves of a persona that didn't exist. Because my father, and I brought it up before, my father, when I was a kid, worked 3 jobs, worked 16 to 18 hours a day. For many years, my father would come home 7:30. I remember it to this day. 7:30 at night. I'd be in my bed watching TV or doing homework. He'd come home 7:30 at night. I'd say hello to him, give him a kiss on the cheek. He would sit at the dinner table. My mom would feed him either squash or escarole and maybe like a veal cutlet or a chicken cutlet. And then after he was done, he would go upstairs in his bedroom, take a bath, go to bed, and that was it. And that's pretty much what I saw of my father for years. And I look back on it, my father had to work 3 jobs because my father didn't know how to read. My father never graduated high school. And the only way that he was going to be able to enjoy his house, keep the caddy that he had, to give us a good education, food on the table, that's what it took for him. And he made it a hell of a lot easier for me as I got older. But when COVID hit, you know, and I saw my bills, and you got to understand something too. You know, it's not just having a place to stay and a car and insurance and taxes and utilities and internet and phone and all this stuff. It's also, you know, expenses for doing shows, equipment, software, bandwidth, this, hosting, and you have all these things. And did I want to sacrifice and give up something during COVID? No, I don't want to give nothing up. So I had to do taxes for tons of people. I had to do grocery deliveries. I had to, you know, work and try to keep customers from canceling or downsizing this and that. And I had to try to get money wherever I possibly could. And, you know, then I realized what happened to me was nothing compared to my father when I was a kid. Because my father worked on his 2 feet, doing groceries, working in a gas station, you know, packing out shelves, doing meat butchers, everything. Me, I'm sitting on my ass. Other than the grocery deliveries, which were not fun because I would have to walk up flights of stairs holding cases of water. That's not fun. To get a $2 tip, sometimes no tip at all. Oh, just leave it in the hallway. Leave it in the hallway. Thinking there's a little envelope taped to the door with a little tip inside. Oh, thank you, Anthony. Send my regards to your family. Fuck you. You know? But I had to do whatever I could. I had to do whatever I could because not only was I trying to get some extra money, but that helped my father and helped my brother because a lot of people were not shopping at his store because they were afraid to leave the house. So he offered grocery delivery. Who's going to deliver the groceries? When you got 10 different customers in the neighborhood all calling at the same time, I need this, I need this, I need this. You don't have 10 people you could just send out. So I offered to do that. And, you know, I lost tons of sleep over it. But for the most part, the taxes, the shows, you know, doing insurance, I sit on my ass all day. So, but again, you know, I saw people that I thought were 1,000 times tougher than me. All they did since February was complain on social media. Woe is me. Woe is me. And then, you know, they, you know, trash everybody else that, you know, were able to get by. And it's just, you know, I have no sympathy for those people. I don't really care about those people, because if you let that thinking creep in, then I'll just sit on my ass all day long and say, woe is me, and try to get people. The saddest thing about it was watching people go on GoFundMe and some other areas, you know, begging for money for crises that didn't exist. And they would use animals. They would use a sick family member. They would use, there was one person, and I brought this story up before. You see this? This is regular bottled water. And you see how it looks like piss? I got these things. It's Pruvit, Pruvit. All it is like salt and ketones, and it's necessary because, you know, on the diet I'm on, you lose a lot of sodium, and that's what causes like headaches and everything else. So every day I got to drink like 1 or 2 of these, and it is bitter, 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 but it is what it is. But I remember one time somebody was facing eviction, and a very popular current tag team champion for a certain wrestling promotion that not everybody likes, I think you can figure out what I'm talking about, they retweeted this person's GoFundMe. And somebody asked me if I would plug it. So I contacted the person privately, and I'm like, look, I don't need your personal information, but, you know, give me the landlord's contact info. I could definitely get some money raised, and I want to send it to your landlord directly so you don't get evicted. And he told me to go fuck myself. You know, I know some of you out there may turn around and say, oh, well, you know, that's very personal information. Well, if you're just going to go on GoFundMe and say, I'm going to be evicted if I don't get $1,000 by Thursday, you need to show me a little proof. I need to see something to back it up. Because you don't know if that person, like I said, there are people since February who have not worked, who have given the impression they've done stuff, and all they have done is collect Medicaid, not Medicaid, food stamps, unemployment, or nothing at all, and doing this, you know, so they could, no. If somebody comes out and says, listen, I'm not working right now, I got no money, and I know that they've made a concerted effort to try to find a job and they just couldn't, yeah, if I can help them out a little bit, I will. But someone that just decided to tweet all day long for 8 months and now is in, you know, on the verge of bankruptcy, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? I know it sounds cold, but, you know, New York, there's a toughness that, you know, is something that, you know, you can't just explain sometimes. Sometimes that toughness is a detriment because everybody feels they're too cool for school. I mean, I come across that almost every day. Ray Guns, favorite Goodfellas scene, thoughts on the Scarface movie. I like Scarface, Al Pacino. I saw it when it came out in movie theaters. You know, that one scene where they were torturing the guy, I thought was a bit extreme. You know, I mean, I loved the Scarface character, you know, because of how, you know, he was nothing and basically swindled and killed his way to get to the top. And then at the end, when everything came crashing down, you know, Scarface was an awesome movie. I mean, it was pretty dark. And yeah, the Razor Ramon character immediately made me think of Scarface when Razor Ramon came out. Just think about that. If Scarface didn't come out, would Razor Ramon character ever come out? Things happen for a reason. You may not be able to get to point A and point B straight, but there's other little things that happen along the way, and things end up the way they are. But but Goodfellas, my favorite scene. Oof, wow, that as crazy as stupid as it sounds, that is an awesome question. I never really thought about, like, you know what? I tell you, even though this is not a great scene, but I'll tell you, the reason why it sticks out to me is because it reminded me of my family growing up. At the very end, where he's got to go on the plane trip with that hair-headed girl that wouldn't leave without a lucky hat and everything. And he's, like in the midst of doing drug deals, he's home and he's molding the meatballs and he's making the sauce. They called gravy. We never called it gravy. We called it sauce. But making the veal cutlets and stirring the sauce. I can't tell you how many times I was a kid, my mom would say, "Did you stir the sauce? Anthony, don't forget to stir the sauce." I mean, everything about that was pretty much how we grew up. And I like Bo Dietl at the end. Bye-bye, dickhead. I mean, man, there's so many good scenes in Goodfellas. Oh, my God. I'm trying to think. You know what? It's another one, too. When he gets the strap from his dad because he hadn't been in school, that reminded me growing up. When he first got pinched, and going, and somebody got shot, and he gives all the... You ruined 13 fucking aprons. There was a guy that we knew. And you know what? If anybody out there on the Northeast ever talks still to Jay Lover or Grim Reaper, great wrestlers, good friends I haven't talked to in a long time, they will tell you. One time, I don't know if we were going to the tanning salon in Howard Beach, but one time, Jay Lover, Reefer, and myself were standing on the corner of Cross Bay Boulevard. And I tell stories while people are alive, so they could justify it. You notice when people die, suddenly everybody talks about how they were their best friend and this and that, because there's nobody to say, I don't even know you. Oh, yeah, we did this and we did this. Yeah, I mean, you didn't talk about it while the person was alive. So I usually tell my stories that people are still alive. One time we were on Cross Bay Boulevard. I kid you not. And we were on the corner. I think we were going to the tanning salon. And there was a guy from the neighborhood, I don't want to say his name, but there was a guy who was still connected, and he ran from one payphone to the other payphone, from one across the street. And he was on one side of the street with the payphone, and then the side that we were on, the payphone started ringing. And you see this guy run across, and I think it was Jay Lover, like, look at this guy. And I realized it was one of my customers. So I look over and I called him, and he looks at me, "Hey, Anthony." He gives me a kiss on both cheeks. I introduce him to Reefer and Jay Lover. And he's like, "I got to take this call." He hangs up the payphone, and then he runs back across the street to the other payphone, because they always were afraid that their phones were tapped. So they would only use payphones. This was only maybe 10 years ago, maybe less than that. So, it's not that long ago. So, to see that, when they were running from payphone to payphone, I mean, man, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. So, just there's so many things. Even Robert De Niro, when he's telling Ray Liotta's wife, go down the corner. There's some coats over there. And she's like, over here. No, over here. 101st Avenue, Ozone Park, Queens. I can't tell you how many times there would be stores like that. My father, go over here, get a couple of suits. When I first left college, and my father realized I wasn't going to school anymore, and I went to look for an office job, my father sent me to 101st Avenue to get a couple of suits. And he sent me to this warehouse, and this guy in the corner is measuring me and stuff like that. So many memories, man. So many memories. Randy Styles, tell us about one of your most bizarre experiences. My apologies for anybody that is on Patreon who knows this story already. I will give the short version of it. This is 1,000% true. One day, I will talk to my mom on speakerphone. Even though she hates that I do these shows, I'll ask her, "Ma, am I lying?" I'll say the story, and she'll say, "No, I remember it clearly." True story. I was about 8 years old, maybe 10 years old, tops. and lived in Middle Village still, and we had an above-ground pool. And I was in the pool with my brother and my friend John, that I'm still friends with to this day. And we were in the pool in the summertime and everything, and my bedroom window faced the yard where the pool was and everything. So we're in the pool and everything, and, you know, just so I could set this up, my parents had a sliding door that connected from the dining room to the yard. So you have a sliding door that they would open, they could walk into the yard. So pretend this is the pool. They had a sliding door that you could open up and walk into the yard. To the right, no, to the left of, yeah, because that would be my right. To the left of the sliding door was my bedroom window. So we're in the pool, and I'm, you know, with my brother and my friend, and I look and I see my grandmother in my bedroom looking out the window, and the blinds were open and everything, and I'm like, "Hi, Nanny," because I always called her Nanny. You've seen pictures of her, you know, you've seen her. So I'm like, "Hi, Nanny." So she's just like smiling and watching us and everything. And, you know, I went back to my business. I know I probably for a second said, like, why is she in my bedroom? You know, like it did, but you know, you had like a windowsill. So she was just like this smiling and everything. So about, I don't know, maybe a half hour later, my mom comes out and she's like, "Do you want anything to drink?" And I'm like, no, I don't remember what my friend John and my brother said, but I said, you know, like, we'll be out soon. You know, why don't you tell Nanny to come outside? And my mom would be like, "She's not here." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I saw her in the window. She's like, "No, she's not here." I'm telling you all, I swear to the day I die, it wasn't a shadow. It wasn't a silhouette. She wasn't dead. She didn't die till 1991, God rest her soul. But I know I wasn't hallucinating. I saw my grandmother looking out the window, just smiling. And I even said, "Hi, Nanny." And she wasn't there. I can't explain it to this day. I told my mom at that time. She thought I was crazy. But I told her, I'm like, she was there. I was not hallucinating. It was no sunlight, you know, joy. It wasn't a cloud that looked like her. I'm convinced to this day it was her. I've had other bizarre experiences, but that one to me probably stands out the most. Actually, I'll tell you one more that I know some of you know already. I never looked it up. I don't know if it's because of fear still, but my father, he's Italian. I'm 100% Italian. Well, I'm supposed to be 97%. Apparently, I have like 1% black in me, 1.5% Jewish in me. True story. But the thing is, my father had these statues of these very famous Italian fighters from like the 1400s or something. And these statues, I don't know why he had them. I've never asked him years later. I always wanted to, but I don't even want to bring it up. My father had this one statue of this very famous Italian warrior. He had a complete knight's outfit on without the hat on. So you saw his whole head. And when my parents let me move into the basement. Yes, for a little while I lived in my parents' basement when I was a teenager. We all wanted to simulate that we had our own apartment. That was a little bit of more privacy. But he always had the statues in the basement as well. So every time I went into the basement, I would always walk past this statue. And many times, like, I would, like, run up the stairs because the statue always scared the shit out of me. And one time I was in, like, what you would call a living room downstairs, and I looked over to the statue, and I swear to God, to this day am convinced the statue turned its head and looked at me. And I fucking freaked out. And I turned the statue around. And I remember my mom coming down one day and she's like, "Why is the statue turned around?" And I was like, "Oh, you know, it fell and I picked it up or whatever." And she's like, "Fall, and it's made out of like ceramic. It would have broken into 1 trillion pieces." But I used to turn it around. I used to, because I didn't want him to think anything, like when I would go downstairs, I'd take like an undershirt, put it over the head. I can't tell you how many times, she would say, "Oh, why is there a pair of boxer, a pair of shorts around the head?" "Oh, I just threw it across the room and it landed. I didn't want that thing to look at me." To this day, I'm convinced it turned around and like smirked at me. It scared the shit out of me. Chatty Chirani, what kind of music do I listen to? I like listening to old school music. I was always into dance music, hip hop, freestyle, old school freestyle, not what you would call today. Freestyle back then, look up Stacy Q and Diamond Girl and Stevie B and stuff. That was what was called freestyle back then. Old school house music, hip house, techno, disco, acid house. That was my go-to. My iPod that I still use a little bit in my car, I have 7,000 songs on it, and probably maybe 100 have to do with rock music, because I like a little bit of rock music as well. Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, groups like that, old school. I'm not into new school stuff. I can't get into it. Very once in a while, I'll get into one song here and there, but for the most part, old school. And I kind of like that about my fiance, because she loves hip hop, but I notice more and more her listening to old school dance music, which is good. Am I familiar with Linkin Park? My opinion on their music? Linkin Park, when it came out, especially in like the mid-90s, early in the mid-90s, I always thought of ECW. Because ECW is where you would learn, you get like some of the grunge songs and Linkin Park and others, that type of music. But if I understand this correctly, because I don't have any notes in front of me, didn't the lead singer die not too long ago? I will tell you that Linkin Park, Nirvana, and a few others, there was one point everybody was listening, including me, was listening to their music. I mean, I wouldn't put U2 in that category, but U2, when I used to go camping, we used to put on, I can't remember the name of the album, the one has Where the Streets Have No Name and, With or Without You and other. We would start our drive with the first song, and we would pretty much always try to make sure that by the last song we were at Bear Mountain. We would go camping. And we would just play the whole album, cassette or CD all the way through. But, very, very big back in the early to mid-90s. In fact, I think the lead singer wasn't he involved with Nirvana as well? I know he was part of another band. Linkin Park, I think they're still trying to reform with a different singer. But early to mid-90s, big deal. You saw that type of music on Beavis and Butthead. You saw that type of music, even MTV late at night, pretty much what you would see. It was a big deal. I mean, I can't tell you how many songs I became a fan of simply because it was played on ECW, or I heard it on Beavis and Butthead, or would see it on another show. I would never see it anywhere else. So good music, definitely good music. Puffy89. I mentioned my fiance is a wrestling fan. Who are some of her favorites right now? She likes Roman Reigns. She likes Drew McIntyre. She likes The Miz. I know a lot of people don't like The Miz. I'm a fan of The Miz as well. I'm trying to think who else. Let's see, with Raw. She likes Jeff Hardy. AEW, she's not that familiar with, but she does enjoy Matt Hardy. She actually is enjoying a little bit of Kenny Omega. Trying to think. Cody. She's like, oh my God, that was dashing Cody Rhodes. Look at him now. I'm like, yeah. She likes that Vicky is in AEW. But those are pretty much her favorites. She likes Kevin Owens. I think she's a huge fan of the Undertakers, without a doubt. She used to like Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. Honestly, don't mean to sound like a jerk, but it seems like one thing they all have in common, they all have a nice ass. I mean, I'm just saying, like, she would sometimes joke around me because she knows it would get under my skin. Like, look at the ass on that. But I would never counter and bring up a diva or a female wrestler and say, look at the ass on that. I try to be a little more classy than that. Let's see what else. If my name was alive, if my grandmother was alive for today's wrestling, would she still be a fan, and who would she gravitate towards? That's a pretty good question. She'd still be a fan. I think she would definitely still be a fan. I think she would gravitate, honestly, towards Roman Reigns. I really do. She would definitely have been a fan of older Cena, not Thugonomic Cena, but Cena. She was more of like the superhero good guys. She loved Hogan so much, man. I felt like such an idiot writing that apology letter to Hogan that in detail talked about how important my grandmother was to me in wrestling and how much she beloved him, and even included the picture of her hugging the cutout on a cruise ship. And guy didn't even read it. And somebody that I trust gave it to Jimmy Hart, who gave it to him, didn't even read it. This was the guy that asked forgiveness for everyone else and everything like that. I mean, I look, I know what some of you say. Did you really think Hogan's? I didn't really think so. But when I knew that this person gave it to Jimmy Hart, and Jimmy Hart, I know for a fact, gave it to Hogan, I said, even though, I'm never going to talk to the guy, but at least, I get to say what I wanted to say. And to know that the person never even opened it up, it is what it is. You know what I mean? That's why, like I say, it's not a shot at anyone. I say we're all nobodies here. It's not a negative towards us. But, you see these people out there, they're too cool for school. They want to say hello when it's time to say goodbye. And I don't like people like that. I understand there's a point where people are extremely, extremely busy and it's almost impossible to respond. But when you respond to nobody and you only want to respond because it's time to say goodbye, now you want to say hello? No. Very few people that I would give that exception to. Michael Articolo. Did I go to a lot of WWF shows back in the 80s? Yes, absolutely. The one that a lot of you are just sick and tired of me bringing up, I was there when Hogan won the heavyweight title. And yes, 10 million people have claimed to have been there as well. But if you go back and you watch the video, when Hogan is coming down the aisle at the very beginning of the match, you'll see me and you'll see my friend Vinny on top of my shoulders. And he goes like this. He had a brown, plaid, almost like a Charlie Brown type sweater on. And we were there. And, at the time, my grandmother, would get tickets to all the garden shows. Sometimes she would go. Sometimes she would take me if it didn't really conflict with my school. And later on, when I worked for Ben's Best Deli, in that recently closed in Kew Gardens, this guy that worked over there had front row tickets and would always sit next to Georgie Ann Macropolis. That's how I became friends with Georgie Ann Macropolis. Georgie Ann Macropolis was the woman who I was friends with online. That if anybody goes back with me that far, you remember all the gaming that her and I playing online casino till 4 o'clock in the morning. She did the Conan drive with me to raise money. She did a lot. She was very, very important in wrestling. Did a lot of fan clubs. She was just an awesome, awesome woman. I cried my eyes out when she died. I did not expect that. But, when I first started going to the garden shows as a guest of this guy that used to work in Ben's Best, he introduced me to Georgianne. He introduced me to all the people sitting in the front row, and that's how I became friends with her. Then when I started doing my own hotline and stuff like that, she did the Wrestling Chatterbox. If anybody remembers the Wrestling Chatterbox, she was a big contributor of that. She would plug my stuff all the time. She was an awesome woman. But that card is the most infamous one that I went to. I could have gone to see Snooker Morocco in a cage, but did not. I think I had school the next day. I think so. Never really bothered to look of the date. I think it might have been a Monday night. But, once in a while, my mom would let me go on a Monday, as long as I came straight home after and went right to bed. But it's not easy. I mean, I would usually go to more local events. We would go in Ridgewood, Queens, Ridgewood Grove Arena, which I brought up many times, where my uncle used to work for WWF at that time. Used to go to Sunnyside, by Sunnyside Gardens once in a blue moon. We would go to Woodhaven, Queens. That's right by me. And to the gymnasium shows. That's pretty much what we would go to. Kevon Lewis. Oh, shout out to you, my friend. He was the one that asked earlier about the rivalries. I already answered that. Kevin K. How bad do I feel for all our ancestors and loved ones who are never able to access internet technology? I got news for you. I talked to people that would have been as old as my grandmother now, even customers of mine who are in their 70s, and they don't want to learn the internet. They don't want to go online. They hear about all toxicity. Those who supported Trump heard about Facebook and Twitter and Instagram doing what they were doing. They see all those news stories of people with the cancer culture and everything like that. I honestly believe that our ancestors and our older folk, and it's not a minority, it's a majority of people. I think older people, use the internet to communicate with family members, loved ones, email, Zoom, things like that, things that are not too difficult to learn, but for the most part, I don't think they would surf the net like we do. My father, uses it out of necessity to buy things that he needs and this and that. But as far as like emailing and socializing, he doesn't do any of that. He has no interest of that. He Googles my name once in a while and he'll show me, what's this? And, it's somebody, it's nowhere near what it used to be, but he would Google it once in a while and something really derogatory would come up. And he would say, who is this person? And I'd be like, don't worry about it. And the funny thing is I have two cousins that same exact name as me. And once in a while, something to be online directed towards one of them. And my father thinks it's mine. I'm like, Dad, that's not me. That's cousin Anthony. And, Danny, 2 November 18th. Thank you for taking the time to answer all the questions. My pleasure, my friend. Do I think life as a freelance consultant is unstable compared to life as a full-time employee? He sees companies are making their employees work 12 hours a day for 7 days. It's rough, man. Like I said, only reason why I bring up my dad is because I have firsthand experience of seeing him go through what he went through. But there are a lot of people within the last year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, who work 10, 12-hour days. There are people who work in restaurants. Look at my brother. My brother runs my father's deli for the most part now. My brother works 6 days a week, sometimes 7. He opens up at 7 a.m. and he closes at 6 p.m. That's almost a 12-hour day. It's 11 hours. Some people who run their own businesses unfortunately have to be there almost 7 days a week if they're open. And even if you're only open 5 days a week, you still have to do some work on the weekends. So, working 7 days is not as rare as people would try to claim it to be. 12-hour days are rough, man. But, hopefully it's a job that you enjoy, because if you enjoy what you do, it doesn't feel as much like work. Insurance has really sucked in the last couple of years. And it's something that I ultimately think I want to get out of. Hopefully, down the line, I won't have to sell insurance anymore. Maybe if I move out of state, the market will be better. But, it's gotten so disgusting as far as, the lack of respect and the lack of making exceptions for people, and some very nasty people. And you can never tell on the opposite side of the phone call, who is a snowflake and who isn't. And I brought up the story not too long ago. I, said to someone, I think it was Christmas and New Year's. I've told the story before. Somebody had done a favor for me for something. I'm like, look, if I don't talk to you later this week, have a good Christmas, Happy New Year, and this and that. And she said to me on the phone, she says, how do you know I celebrate Christmas? And it caught me off guard. And I was like, well, I just say it, to wish everybody happy holidays. She said, well, then wish me a happy holiday. How do you know I celebrate Christmas? And I thought she was joking at first. She was dead serious. She got mad because I wished her a Merry Christmas. And if I went to, I forget what country celebrates Kwanzaa. Is it Africa? But let's say Africa celebrates Kwanzaa. I guarantee you, if I traveled to Africa tomorrow, and tomorrow was Kwanzaa, and I got off the plane, I guarantee you that some people there would probably say to me, Happy Kwanzaa. It's not that they're assuming that I celebrate it also. It's a way of just expressing some people just really take shit way too seriously. People take stuff way too seriously. This weekend, Mike Tyson had that fight with Roy Jones Jr. I got to see it last night. And I thought it was fun. I think that there's a rematch and big money to be made. I think that's why it ended in a draw. But I go on social media to see what other people's reactions were, if they felt Tyson won the fight. And what do I see? Grumpy old bitches complaining about that they're over the hill and why is this even happening? And I'm just like, why can't you just fucking enjoy it? If it doesn't appeal to you, then shut the fuck up and let people who do enjoy it themselves. There's always got to be people out there that because they don't like something, they have to tell you why it sucks. And that's why I stay away. I tweeted maybe twice in the last 4 or 5 days. I tweet out of necessity, and it's funny that some people think that their whole level of success is based on how many followers or how many likes they get. Like I say all the time, do I want to tweet or do I want to eat? Have 1 million followers. I don't give a fuck. All I know is that I have a good family. I'm engaged. I got the bills under control. I'm going to get married hopefully soon, move out, get my own place, and, enjoy my future. And other people are going to be more ecstatic that they got 50 likes for bitching. Not interested. Joseph Acevedo, thank you for the kind words, my friend. He'd like to hear a show based on my memories growing up. From time to time, if I do a show like that, I'm going to run out of things to talk about. And sometimes little things that are just buried emotionally will come out for no reason. Mish and I the other day, 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about cartoons growing up, and who would have ever thought I would ever think about wacky races and, things that we enjoyed as little kids. There'd be no other reason to bring it up. So sometimes regular convo sparks memories. But as things come up and it sparks a memory, I'll share it with you, if you all find it interesting. Favorite eggplant dish, easily Parmesan. I could still make it now, even on keto. I bread the eggplant with egg and almond flour, like an egg wash with almond flour, or pork rinds, or a mixture of the two. Fry it in avocado oil or very, very light olive oil. Put regular RAUL's tomato sauce on it. Mozzarella cheese, grated cheese. Almost perfect. So Parmesan, without a doubt. My mom, when I used to eat regular breadcrumbs, would just fry eggplants. And I would just eat it like that. Or I would eat it with a piece of American cheese on a roll. Absolutely outstanding. Another way I eat eggplant even now, if you all have never tried this and you like eggplant, try this. You'll absolutely love it. Cut the eggplants a little thicker, not too thick, but maybe quarter of an inch, half an inch, just thick enough you can't see through them. And soak it in olive oil, garlic, salt and pepper. Just soak it, marinate them. And then you grill them on a barbecue and you put them on top of a hamburger. Grilled eggplant, soaked in olive oil. But just be careful because you don't want it dripping in olive oil because you'll have a gigantic fire on your barbecue. It'll, you won't burn the house down, but, you'll have too big of a fire and the eggplant will burn. So, but barbecued eggplant, grilled over a hamburger or a cheeseburger, outstanding. Gabriella. What's up, Gabriella? She's new and she enjoys the show. She's surprised I only have 16,000 subs. She is in New York, would like to know if I could recommend a wrestling school. Yes. Long Island, New York. I know of Brian Myers, Kurt Hawkins, still is involved with a wrestling school. VPW. I actually was part of that wrestling school, not as a trainer, but as a trainee way back when. They do a fine job. Those two right off the bat, I will tell you. If Brian Myers is still in, I'm pretty sure Brian Myers at a wrestling school. Maybe he was a guest trainer. Maybe I'm mixing it up with there. But VPW, Victory Pro Wrestling, and I know it's still around. And if you go there, tell them that I recommended it. And, tell them Anthony DeBlasi has the podcast and everything. They don't remember Don Tony. They don't remember because I did the Don Tony character on about 40 of their shows. I got to manage quite a few people. I was privileged to have 3 matches. So that's what I would recommend. I don't know what part of New York you're from. Too bad it wasn't 20 years ago because if you could have joined Doghouse Wrestling, that's when Homicide came through, Eddie Kingston and others. When you see DHS, especially with Eddie Kingston, DHS or Homicide and others, I'm pretty sure it's Doghouse Wrestling School. Doghouse Wrestling was the shit. Right off of Jamaica Avenue. You have no idea. Look up Doghouse Wrestling and look at the students that came through that school. And it is infamous. And it closed down many years ago. They were going to do a show once in Ridgewood, Queens. I was actually going to help out with it. It was going to be taking place on Elliott Avenue. And for some reason, I don't remember the reason why, but they put bad locks on the door. I don't know if it had to do with not having insurance or the proper permits, but it never happened. It was supposed to be a reunion show. So I don't bring up stuff like that too much, because there's really no reason to. But Doghouse was tremendous. Johnny Rodz had an awesome school. I used to go there and hang out while Timmy Austin, God rest his soul, the ECW Zombie, used to train there. Went to a couple of events that they would do in Spanish Harlem. That's another one if it's still around. And as far as me having only 16,000 subscribers, this is one thing that maybe I have to stress more on this channel. 75 to 80% of everybody who tunes into my stuff access audio-only shows. Not everybody wants to sit here and look at me, so they'd rather, and some people, it's easier for them. They work. I have a lot of people who drive trucks, post office people, they're delivering mail, and they don't want to have to look at a video, so they put the audio version on. It's less data, less to download. So about 80%, 4/5 of everybody who enjoys my stuff do not watch the videos. They may watch the video. If I'm on with Mish, we might have a laugh or share some pictures or stuff like that. But that's why when people try to compare my channel, which is not even a year old, but people who compare my channel to other people out there, like, you only got 1/10 of the views. I'm like, yeah, what about the thousands and thousands of downloads for audio only? That's something that a lot of other places don't have. So if I got rid of audio only and strictly made everybody go to YouTube, of course my numbers would be bigger. But, I want to give everybody the opportunity to enjoy the show as they want. It's not the be-all, end-all to do YouTube. Obviously, doing video, it's an extension of my personality that you would not be able to get to audio. Like I said, you could hear a kind voice. You could see stuff written on social media that sounds, oh, what a nice guy. You don't see somebody's face. You don't see the person. It's not a shyness, because if you're doing shows and you got this huge following and you can't show yourself, in my opinion, as far as me, something's up there. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm that insecure that I can't show myself, and there were points where I was. There were points many years ago I was going to go video, and I didn't because I was kind of embarrassed with the way I looked. But if I expect people, if people are asking me for advice, and, I think it's only respectful that they know exactly what they're getting. And, when I started doing video, the one thing that I was kept being hit with over and over again is, oh my God, you are nothing the way I pictured you to be on just audio. And 99% of the time, that was a compliment. Even when I went to Lucky 13 last year with Wrestling Soup, and everybody came down to hang out with all of us, and people finally met me in person like, oh my God, you're nothing what I thought you would to be. Because you hear a certain voice, whether it's a pleasant sounding, nice voice, or whether it's a wise ass, you're painting a picture based on only what you hear or only what you read. And I feel if I can't show you my face, my eyes, something's up there. Seriously. And 9 times out of 10, somebody's hiding something. And the problem is there's a lot of people out there that do the very same thing online, so they'll never call somebody else out on that because they're just as guilty as them. That's why, like I say, the one thing that disgusts me about social media more than anything else is people bash the messenger instead of the message. That should never be. That should never be. It's okay for the message, but the messenger, no. That's when I realize best thing for me to do, stay focused, have fun with all of you, and pardon my French, but I'll say it nicely. The hell with everybody else out there. Doug Eaton, he appreciates the kind words I said last time about his mom and his dad. I meant that, man. I meant that. His mom had a happy cry when he showed it to her, and his dad does not cry a lot, but I made him tear up a little bit. Parents are very important, man. Seriously. I know it sounds trivial and it sounds like a line, but believe me when I tell you, if you are close with your parents, never take it for granted that they're going to be around tomorrow. The one that we always think about more than anything else is Rocky Johnson. And when The Rock said, you could tell that The Rock didn't have as close of a relationship in the final time that he wanted to with his dad. He just wanted a little bit more, just that little bit more. And I could never live it myself to do that. So I'm going to see my parents tomorrow. And I'm going to keep extreme distance. I'll stay on the opposite side of the room. And I might even wear a mask when I'm ever around them. I know I didn't catch anything over the weekend, but I'm not going to take a chance. I spend as much time as I possibly can with my parents because tomorrow is never guaranteed. My mom is already living on borrowed time. So I really appreciate that more than what you could ever know what you said, because parents are a very important thing. And if some of you out there don't have a really tight relationship with your family, not trying to tell you to do otherwise, but maybe, you make an extra call here and there. You may not care all that much about it, but believe me when I tell you, the person on the opposite side of the phone, they may act like they may not care all that much. And the minute you hang up the phone with them, they're bawling, crying. Believe me when I tell you, I could tell you sometimes just a simple phone call to my mom brightens up her day. And to me, that's the ultimate gift you could give. Anthony Paventa, on some of the shows, I alluded to a car crash in '96 nearly killed me. May I ask what happened? People are like, oh, no, please, no. I'll give the short story. July 1996, I was working for my father's deli at the time. I was still in a phase, very irresponsible with finances and responsibilities. I had a 91 Pontiac Grand Prix with bald tires. And instead of buying new tires, I bought a stereo. One time I was on my way to work, and all I know is that I was driving in the rain on Woodhaven Boulevard, passing Forest Park. And if anybody's familiar with that neighborhood, if you go on Woodhaven Boulevard and you drive past Forest Park, in fact, you know what? Maybe this week I'll record like 10 seconds of video so you can see what I'm talking about. There's about 100 barriers and warning signs about the turn. When I had my accident in 96, there were no barriers and no signs there. In fact, from what I understand, about 2 or 3 weeks after my accident in 96, someone else got crushed to death because an 18-wheeler went around the bend too quickly and flipped over and landed on a car and crushed somebody to death. They put the barrier signs up after that. So no, I can't take the claim that they put the barriers up because of my accident, but I went around the bend. I don't remember the accident. I'm only telling you from what I read on witness reports after, but I went around the bend. Somebody lost control and hit the side of my car just barely, and I lost control. I went head on into a telephone pole, and my car split in half. I was in a coma for a day and a half. I was in the hospital for almost 3 weeks. Broken pelvis, broken hip, dislocated pelvis, shattered my ankle, broke bones in my leg, my foot. Just permanent injury I still deal with to this day. But the thing is, and I only know this because of thinking about past incidents. I used to drive reckless in the snow. Never really had an accident in the snow, but a couple of times I would lose a little control. Or if I'm driving a little too fast and I slam on the brakes, I know just from me in the past, my instinct would be, and some of you may do this as well, that when you slam on the brake, if you put your foot down with more force, that somehow it's going to stop the car even more. So you slam on the brakes. Look, the scene in Goodfellas, when the caddy, remember he's on the highway and he's not paying attention and he slammed his foot on the brakes? They even show you his foot slam on the brakes. Slamming on the brakes is fine. But for some reason, some people don't just step on the brake. Even like the movie Goodfellas, he's like this, putting all of his weight on that brake pedal, thinking that if he puts 200 pounds of force, somehow it's going to stop the car even more. It doesn't. Me at the time, I was close to 300 pounds. And what I must have done was when I was slamming the brakes, trying to prevent the car from hitting the pole, that I put so much force on that brake pad that when the collision happened and the impact happened, everything on my right side just broke up. You understand? I had my foot pinned on the brake pedal. And when I hit with all that force on the brake pedal, there's nowhere for that force to be absorbed. Everything broke. And that's it. To this day, I'm still suffering pain from it. It's not fun. Especially when I can't sleep at night, I have to make a decision. Do I take a sleeping pill or do I take a painkiller? Luckily, I only take one painkiller a day, sometimes two, because I have a spinal stimulator in me. But, you know, you got to be careful, man. Seriously, getting the dash cam was the best thing that ever happened to me because I could document in case I ever get into an accident and it's not my fault. I got proof of it. But it also documents how I drive. So if I drive stupid, it's going to record it as well. So if I have an incident and I chase someone, it's going to show the video of it. So that's why I always tell everyone out there, if you have the means, Cyber Monday is probably a great excuse for it. Get a dash cam. It'll help you if you ever get into an accident, but also help change your driving habits if you think you have a problem. Michael Kemmers, some matches that were made better by a hot crowd, in my opinion. Oh, any match. And I'm not saying this is a cop-out, but any match with a live crowd makes it more fun. Come on. Any match. I mean, if you even want to get into specifics, I brought this up before we even had, well, actually, no, we did have COVID because it was the NXT wrestlers pretending to be fans. You had Timothy Thatcher versus Johnny Gargano. And I had said at that time, I said, I can't wait to see what this quarter-hour rating looks like, because I think with a live crowd there, they would have been dead as a doornail, because fans just were not into Thatcher at all. And you go back and you watch that match, and they're banging the plexiglass and everything, and they made the match a little bit more fun. And I even said it on that Wednesday Night Dynamite. I'm like, yeah, and those fans made this match feel much bigger than what it was. And sure enough, the ratings sucked for that match. So anything with a live crowd makes it better. But if you want me to give you one, the ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view, just the Cena RVD match, by far. I watch that match sometimes just for the crowd reaction. It's just, and if you haven't seen it in a long time, or if you've never watched that match, go watch it. You'll thank me for it. So, which cities have the best wrestling crowds? You know, you got your usuals: New York, Chicago. There's areas of Florida, Texas. I mean, you know, I don't blame the crowds as much as the content. You know, yeah, there's always been a stigma with Long Island fans not being as energetic as New York City fans. Trust me, you give them a banging show, everybody's going to be yelling and screaming. Philadelphia is an awesome crowd for wrestling. Pittsburgh is an awesome crowd for wrestling. You know, Los Angeles, I remember the XPW shows, that crowd was insane. So it's not necessarily the areas. I mean, sure, there's some areas that you could give them shit and they'll still get energized, but you give people a good crowd, good card, that crowd will be energized. Look at AEW. AEW, before COVID, had been in enough cities, some that are not notorious for being really energetic, and they were eating it up. So it's, you know, you give them a good product that they could relate to, they'll respond. What I have for Thanksgiving, Phil, a promoter. Believe it or not, I had a burger, I had a salad, and bottled water. We were going to go to this seafood place called Summer Shack. I'm sure some of you have heard of it, but we just decided to stay in Thursday night. We really didn't mingle that much, like go out. I mean, we had a nice dinner Friday and Saturday. We went to a Mexican place Friday, and we went to an Italian place Saturday. But, you know, we went very early before the big rush of people, you know, going in. But no, Thanksgiving night, you know, originally I was going to have turkey and she was going to have seafood. We just decided to just stay in and have a burger. And like I said, that person, transgender, you know, she was a woman, now she's a man, or vice versa. I never asked, you know, but I think she was a man, now she's a woman. But she delivered the food, and it was awesome because I hadn't seen her in a year. And we were, you know, it felt so good because, you know, they come across thousands of people over the year. And she remembered immediately, saw my face. Oh, my God, you got engaged last year. Where is she? Let me see the ring. Maybe she wanted a nicer tip, but you could tell when some people aren't faking. She wasn't faking. It was awesome. Did I get the invite for Vince Russo's Discord? You know what, Phil? I haven't been around for the last week for the most part. In fact, I haven't even been on Patreon. Yes, I had to, and this was a mess because I'm in Connecticut, and I have Kev asking me to record him for Discord, and all I had was this cheap laptop that I never used to record shows. I don't even know how the audio came out, but I have not been on anything since really, I mean, Wednesday Night Don-O-Mite a little bit to prepare for the show, but I haven't checked, so I don't even know, to be honest with you. I probably did because I'm on all his patrons. I'm on Jeff Lane's Patreon as well, so but I haven't checked. Tyree Jones, thank you for the support, my friend. In my opinion, was The Rock's, who was The Rock's the best rivalry with? You know, I think a lot of people would feel Triple H. You know what the funny thing is about that time? Even though he and Triple H or even if you want to put him and Austin, but I think him and Triple H a little bit more, it didn't feel like an awesome rivalry at that time. Like for me at that time, I think The Rock and Foley was crazy because of the I Quit match and, you know, some of the other things that were going on at that time. But you look back on it and people started really focusing on Triple H, Rock as one great feud. I'm like, you know, back at the time you really didn't feel it, but you look back on it like, all right, I could see that. You know, for me, I probably would go with that. Austin is right up there as well. You know, but Austin's, I think it was more because of the two top names, you know, feuding with each other. And, you know, yes, Austin had to abruptly retire. But I don't know, man. I kind of look back on it and Triple H kind of wins it out a little bit more for me, you know, especially the spoofs on the Nation. And, you know, I don't know. That's just my opinion. If Sting turned in 96 and not Hogan, would have things been different? Sure. Because Hogan was 1,000 times bigger of a star than Sting. And it wouldn't have mattered as much. It would have been very regional. And Hogan turning, you know, was much more than regional. There were tons of fans that became WCW fans because of Hogan, whether you like it or not. Sting being the leader of the NWO would not have been remotely close. You know, look, even when he said the fans could stick it, you know, like he transitions to the, like, it wasn't as big of a deal. It's iconic for WCW and for WCW loyal fans out there, but Sting, and this is not a knock on Sting, Sting was nowhere near on the level of Hogan. Not even close. Not even close. You bring up Hollywood, you bring up this, you bring up that, pop culture, you know, no, not even close. Tuxedo Earth, what do I think about WWE's championship scramble matches? Mish and I had the conversation last week about it. A little bit too much in the tournament department lately. They've been doing it across the board. Look, in COVID, you got to have more gimmick matches. I think they have finally figured that out, even with NXT. You got to have more gimmick matches. That seems to be the formula for COVID. If you're going to suffer, you know, one way because of live fans not being there and how things are presented, then you got to, you know, change it up a little bit. You know, if your product is not as strong, you know, then you got to take everything around it and make it seem more important. So, you know, I think the gimmick matches are more important than the WWE Championship Scramble matches. And ratings kind of prove that. You look at Halloween Havoc for NXT, every gimmick match had a decent number. And the minute you take away the gimmick, and the worst part about it is you had gimmick matches after the fact, and WWE just totally like crapped on it. That Dexter Lumis, Cameron Grimes blindfold match was one of the worst matches. He ran away. There was no finish to it. If that would have been built up a little bit differently, I think that would have done you have to do these extra gimmick matches. That's why even tonight, I think Jeff Hardy and Elias are having a symphony match. I think they've done 2 already. You know, they're realizing now that a straight up match is not enough during COVID. You know, people feel like they could skip a week. So if you make something a little bit more wacky and hype it up, you have a better chance of people tuning in. We're almost done. Let's see. Have me and my fiance ever watched Japanese anime? Not really. Never really got into that. King of James. I almost thought it was Kingdom James. Mistalking to that guy. King of James. Do I think if Triple H reached out to CM Punk that they could work things out? I wouldn't be surprised if we learned that Triple H already did reach out to CM Punk. I think CM Punk is pretty much set in his ways, as in AJ Lee. Never say never. I think if they break the bank, you could possibly have him. I think if you break the bank, they probably would come in as a team. As crazy as that sounds, I think there's more of a chance of them coming in as a team than coming in separately. I don't know why. It's just something that I've thought about. Anything is possible. They worked out things with Bruno. They worked out things with Brett. You know, CM Punk is obviously nothing like them, but anything is possible. Sterling, current favorite promotion or show to watch? I don't know, man. Every promotion is hurting to a certain extent. I kind of like AEW because it's just a little bit different. NXT has its moments here and there, but you get that dopey shit that creeps in every so often, every other episode. That formula is too predictable that I've talked about on Wednesdays way too many times. SmackDown is fun. Raw is not anywhere near what it could be. So just by process of elimination, AEW. Dave Schneider. Will I add a pay-per-view contest for AEW starting in 2021? No. Not many people watch them. Maybe we do smaller. I'll probably leave it up to the Patreon family. Maybe what we'll do, because in 2021, the prize wall is going away. December is the last month for the prize wall because almost everybody this year, with the exception of maybe 2 prizes, didn't want anything from the prize wall. People want moolah, money. And money is never a bad thing because then you could buy whatever you want with it, or you could pay off a bill with it, or you could buy food with it. You could do whatever you want with it. So, the more I think about it, this is what I'll do. In the next couple of weeks, I'll put up a poll on Patreon to ask everybody, do they want one bigger contest every month with a bigger prize, or do they want 2 a month with smaller prizes? Maybe have the prize instead of $100, maybe you make it 50 and 50, something like that. Or maybe you make the WWE one a little bit bigger in prize and the AEW a little bit smaller, since not everybody watches AEW. And we see it almost every show. I see it on my numbers with downloads on Wednesdays. AEW and NXT is much less of an audience than the other products. And I know what you're going to say. Well, Wednesday Night Wrestling is almost the same as Monday Night Raw's ratings. You can't go by that because when you look at pay-per-view and buy rates and subscriptions, you have hundreds of thousands on the WWE network watching the WWE pay-per-view, and you only have 50 to 100,000 at the most tuning into an AEW, and plus our Patreon family. That doesn't mean that half of them watch AEW. Our Patreon page might favor more WWE programming over AEW. Just like some other podcasts out there, their audience is more AEW heavy than WWE. So I'll leave it up to the patrons to decide. What are my thoughts on Asuka's year so far? This is from Noob and Company. What's up, Noob? Noob, thank you always for the support, my friend. I think Asuka has, by far, top to bottom, January to December, she is the number 1 wrestler for WWE. WWE didn't start off COVID and their shows all that great. Asuka was doing double and triple duty a week. Asuka was doing a hell of a job with Kairi Sane. She was the go-to. She wrestled on a pay-per-view, which didn't make sense. You remember when I think she fought Bayley and she might have fought Sasha, I think, on the same pay-per-view? She has been the go-to. Plus, early on with COVID, just her yelling and screaming. Everybody was into it, and you didn't understand a word she was saying. It didn't matter. She looked, this is my most favorite thing about Asuka. This is probably, I'm serious, Noob, and I think you'll appreciate this. this is the most favorite thing what I like about Asuka. You could tell that she's homesick. You could tell that she misses family and friends overseas. But when she is on TV or on social media or on video, she looks like she is truly having fun. And when I see someone that I enjoy performing and you know that, or they come across that they're having the time of their life and, you know, not just going through the motions just, you know, because they have to, it makes it that much more enjoyable. Asuka by far, and I know some people are going to say Roman Reigns, and deservingly so, but Roman Reigns, count how many matches he's had this year compared to Asuka. Roman Reigns has done spectacular so far. I still give it to Asuka, in my opinion. Across the board. Whether it's AEW, WWE, NXT, Japan, across the board, I give it to Asuka. It's the Cosenza. He just wanted to give a shout out to Deli Man. Much love, my friend. Devin, what type of wrestling am I into? The flippy shit or the old school? Look, I love old school because old school tells a better story. I want wrestling to tell me a story. You can have flippy and tell a story as well. Guevara and Matt Hardy is somewhat of a good example of that. But to do flippy just to do flippy is stupid to me. And I brought this up not too long ago, and it's a really bad example because I really enjoy John Morrison's work, and I'm frustrated how WWE's utilized him the last 6 months, but this is a good example of what I mean. There was a match recently. It was Miz and Morrison versus Drew McIntyre. And Miz got hit with a move from Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre went for a pin. Morrison broke up the pin. But what Morrison decided to do to break up the pin was do like a backflip in the ring. He stood. Go back and watch the match. He stood right next to McIntyre and did a backflip. Where in storyline, common sense, you just had to kick him in the back. And he did a fucking flip. And I said, you know, for all of the criticism that AEW gets for their flippy shit, everybody should have been all over that garbage because all you do is just kick McIntyre and the count would have been broken and he does a flip. I understand when some people are going to say, oh, he was showboating and this and that. It's not the point. Trying to break up the count. You know, showboat when you go for the pin. It just, when I saw that, I'm like, that's an example of flippy. Cornette should have been all over that. I don't follow Cornette. Cornette, a lot of people, he reels them in. They listen to every word he says, and they think what he says. He understands. He's an entertainer. Cornette's not stupid. Cornette knows where his bread is buttered. Cornette knows what his audience is looking for. And Cornette every fucking week reels them in. And you see these people on social media, oh, Cornette said this. I got to agree with Cornette. Cornette on point. And I'm like, you motherfuckers are so played. Because he's an entertainer and he knows what is generating the ratings, the numbers, the bucks. Cornette is an extremely intelligent man. But Cornette, if he didn't, should have been all over that one break of a pin attempt. Jay Carlos. What's up, Jay Carlos? What's going on? What do I think about a feature on the WWE Network about watching the shows automatically in chronological order? I brought this up once before. It's really difficult to do that because you would have to go numerous years. And the problem is, in today's society, you want to get from point A to point B like this. You need an answer to a question, you Google it. You need instant gratification, instant response, instant reaction, instant. Across the board, instant. And I loved WWF back in the day. you could go 80s, you could go 90s, you could go 2000s. But you don't, if you go in chronological order, let's say 1995, you know, people are not going to watch every week, or, you know, I'll give you a better one. Monday Night Raw started in 1993. What, January 7th, 1993? If I got that date right, slap me, because I shouldn't be able to get that. Maybe it's this. But 1993, I'm probably wrong with the date, but 1993. If you want to do in chronological order and air it in chronological order, and I understand what you're saying, tonight on WWE Network, we're going to do Raw from January 1993. Next week will be the following week. The problem is nobody is going to watch all of 93, then all of 94, then all of 95. They're going to just, let me just get right to the main point. It's like you're watching porn online. You're not going to sit there and watch the conversation at the dinner table. The doorbell rings. Hey, I'm here to fix your stove. Oh, it's over here. And no, you're just going to fast forward to the point where everybody's naked. So the attention span is much different. They offer seasons in a row. There's no reason why you and I cannot watch it in chronological order in many areas right now. I'll tell you this much. I always wanted to see the older WWF in chronological order. Maybe around 77, when Graham first won the title. I would have liked to have seen in chronological order the build of Backlund. I know for 99% of you out there, like, it's kind of boring. Yeah, I know. But, you know, when I became a wrestling fan in 79, you know, and at that time I still didn't even understand what I was watching. 82 is when I really got into it. My mom let me start watching it, and I would go to all the shows wherever I could. But, you know, if I could watch certain things in chronological order, the Zbyszko-Bruno feud, I always want to see in chronological order how that played out on TV, you know. And the thing is, with TV, with so many squash matches, they're not going to show regional interviews. And the regional interviews were very, very important. Morocco Snuka, which is one of my favorite feuds of all time. I mean, I didn't put it as number one early. I said Brett and Shawn, but Snuka Morocco is my number 2 or 3. But Snuka Morocco, if you just depended what you saw on TV, it was mostly squash matches. You had the Buddy Rogers corner, Buddy Rogers, and he got, you know, smashed Snuka with the microphone. Other than that, what got you pumped were all the regional interviews. You know, why do you think I put it on my channel 10 years ago? I mean, I taped it myself on TV. You know, when Morocco, Madison, I mean, it's just the promos gave you chills. That's what got you to the Garden, not what you saw on TV. So doing chronological order would not work out for all of us unless they show the regional stuff as well. And then if you do regional, what are you going to show? What the promos were in New York? Coming up, Madison Square Garden. The date is set, as Vince would say. Madison Square Garden, the Phenom. That's what Jimmy Snuka was. Not the Undertaker. The Jimmy Superfly Snuka, the Phenom versus the Magnificent. And what regional area are you going to play? California? Chicago? So you got to do regional. That's the catch. That reeled you in. And that's something nobody ever talks about when they talk about retro, because they weren't there to experience it. Psycho 187. What made me become a podcaster? The truth. The truth. I had my car accident in 96, which I told you all earlier. I got married once. I got my marriage annulled. It's erased. I paid the church. It's off the books, as if I was never married. I met my ex while I was still in a wheelchair in 1996. I met her by accident. I was home in my house. Promise you, this will only be a minute or two. I was home in my house about a month after my accident, still couldn't walk. I was very lonely. I took out my little black book, which was paper thin. I called an ex-girlfriend just to see what she was doing. Couldn't go anywhere. I had no car. It was totaled. And I called her house. She wasn't home. Her sister was there. Her sister didn't live with her. Sister happened to be there. And I was talking to her sister, and she's like, oh, what's going on? And I told her what happened. She's like, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. She's like, well, I'll let Kristen know that you called and everything. I'm like, okay, all right. And then her kid started crying. And she, instead of hanging up the phone, she's like, hold on a second, talk to my friend. And she put me on the phone with someone I never talked to before. I ended up marrying her. How weird is that? I ended up marrying her. Biggest mistake I did, but I ended up marrying her. So my point is, I met her in 96. I got married in 99. 6 months later, it was over. And the reason why it was over is a lot of her family, she had not talked to for years. They lived in Florida. She didn't talk to her father. She didn't talk to relatives. I don't know all the story of the falling out, but she didn't talk for years. We got married. We wanted to have kids. She had a fertility problem. We went to a doctor, gave fertility drugs, and I'll never forget it. The doctor said to her, do not put all your eggs in one basket. May not happen the first time around. Got to keep trying, got to keep trying. Well, she put all her eggs, her mental eggs, all in one basket. She didn't get pregnant, and she went into this huge depression. I thought the answer was to surprise her with a plane ticket to go to Florida so she could see her dad she hadn't talked to in 10 years. Gave her a plane ticket. She was crying, happy cries. She went to Florida. I told her that I would meet up with her like a week or two later. I couldn't just take off. I got my office. So about 2 weeks later, I went down to Florida and met her father. And the first words out of his mouth is, oh, so you two are going to move down here? I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. So I played along. I'm like, yeah, well, we haven't set things up. So I had a long talk with her that night. I'm like, look, when we met and we got serious, I told you, that I can't just get up and leave my family. She was not talking to her family. So I had to be convinced that her family was not going to be a factor later on. Now she wants to live in Florida. So, but for the sake of both of us, I said, look, if we're going to move to Florida permanently, I got to do this right. I got to find a place. I got to transfer my insurance license. I got to get a business set up before I move to Florida. And she's like, no problem. So I flew back to New York. 2 days later, when are you going to come? 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 I'm like, this is going to take I got to do. And I realized that 10 years that she lost with her family was all catch up to her. And there was no way that I was going to go to Florida and live in a trailer park with no money, and we just grew distant like this. And I went from thinking that we got married and we're going to have kids and have a great life thereafter to having nothing 6 months later. And I got into a depression. And wrestling hotlines was one of the things that I called back then that would get my mind off of my problems. And I, used to leave comments for hotlines and everything. And long story short, well, there's a lot that I'm leaving out on this. But the thing was, actually, let me go back 2 years. So in 96, when I first had my car accident, you have a lot of downtime. I watched a lot of baseball, called a lot of wrestling hotlines. One was Dominic Valente, who's still in business now. And I would leave messages, and he would answer them. And, we would have some discussions here and there. I never had a hotline. And, I went on this other hotline called Captain Ivan. And he's like, why don't you do a hotline? You like to talk about wrestling and stuff like that. I mean, I wasn't working at the time. So I was like, I'll do the hotline a little bit, just a little hobby. So I started that in 96. And it started to get a little bit popular in 96. But it was just for New York. And I did that 96, 97, 98. In 99, when I really started getting depressed because I went from having a great marriage and everything to nothing 6 months later, I really dedicated a lot more time towards my hobbies, my business, wrestling hotline, my dog, my family. Everything that made me happy, I focused on. And as far as the hotline, when I really put a lot of attention to it in 99, it blew up. It got so big, it was the #1 wrestling hotline in the United States. King Jordan and Blackjack Brown wanted me to set up a 900 number. That's how big it got. ECW, the original ECW. And I don't want to mention the names, but people who worked big in ECW, the original one, got wind of my hotline and asked me if I would push tickets through my hotline. And in return, I always got front row seats in New York, and I got to hang out backstage. If you all remember Smoked Out, who used to do the Minority Report with us, Chronic Connection, he had that hotline. He was there with me a couple of times. You could see me on pay-per-views. I've told those stories. You've seen a lot of proof of it. So 96 to 99, it was more just hobby, talking about wrestling. You know, it wasn't anything. I mean, there was 50 hotlines at that time. In 99, when I tried to focus on everything that made me happy, and it was the best thing that ever happened, because it convinced me that I made the biggest mistake of my life marrying this girl. And she came back a couple of years later, wanting to get back together. And, you know, I kept saying, no, I'm coming to New York. Let's just come, let me come by and talk. Then I thought, I'll let her come over. I'll get laid, this and that. And I'm like, no, I don't even want to reopen that. And, you know, she wouldn't take no for an answer. So when she showed up at my house, I didn't answer the door. And she kept ringing the bell, yelling outside, you know, let me open the fucking door. And this, I didn't come over here. And I told her, I'm going to call the cops if she don't leave. And she left. I never talked to her again. I talked to her sister many years later. And her sister was an interesting, that's for another time. But when I knew her sister was 7. When her sister got in touch with me again, now she's 19, 20. You know, it was like almost like a Murphy Aaliyah thing. I mean, there was no interest there, but it was weird. It was weird talking to a woman who is now almost 20 years old. And the last I remember her, actually the first words out of her mouth was, I always wanted to thank you for the swing set you bought me. There's a 20-year-old girl now thanking me for a swing set I bought her when she was 7. It's kind of like creepy when you think about it. It's weird. It's weird. So that's how I got into the hotlines. In 96, it was more because I couldn't do much. I was still rehabilitating. In 99, it was to block out depression. And the rest is history. So we only have 2 questions left, everybody. Austin Kinkle, my favorite game to play on game night. I tell you, I like Quiplash. That's fun. The drawing game gets a little hard, especially Jason Lynn. That fucking guy draws awesome. Slave Cheeks draws incredible. But Quiplash is fun. Among Us, if Among Us could last 5-10 extra minutes, be a little bit more difficult, you know, I would probably say that is the game. But they end too quickly, you know, but those games are fabulous. I love Trivia Murder Party out of all of them. The problem is some of the questions are too current. They don't mix in a lot of, they should give you topics, or they should give you packs that you could buy that include 80s and 90s and 2000s. Like everything is The Hobbit and Today and Charmed, or not Charmed, Charmed is outdated, but you know, Twilight and stuff. I'm like, I don't fucking watch any of that stuff. No, name the 3 characters from this. I'm like, I don't even know what they're talking about, and I just guess sometimes. But Trivia Murder Party, out of all of them, is probably my favorite one. Welcome to Trivia Murder Party. All right. We'll save that. And finally, Crazy Cruiserweight. Did I ever go to an adult movie theater? Yes, one time when you used to be able to go to peep shows in Manhattan. Me and my friends were teenagers. We were on 42nd Street. I think I told this story once before. We were all wearing animal noses that we bought in some novelty shop, and we were just laughing, hysterical. My friend bumped into Rob Lowe. And Rob Lowe, when they bumped into each other, it wasn't like, hey, what's going on? No, we were walking down the street, and I didn't see it. But, you know, my friend said it after. What happened was we were walking down the street, and as we were walking this way, some guy is walking this way, and boom, like really bumped into my friend's shoulder hard. And he's like, well, why don't you watch where you're going? And the other person said it as well. And then we were like, holy shit, it's Rob Lowe. And then he was pretty cool. But for that split second, he just bumped into us really, really hard. And but we were walking Greenwich Village. We went to 42nd Street. We went to Tower Records. We went here. But we went by the peep shows. And, you know, my friend was like, oh, let's go to the peep show. Let's go to the peep shows. And I'll never forget, we won into one. I don't remember how much it was, but we all had a booth. We put money in. And the thing raised. And there was a girl in the middle doing a live performance. And you look around and you see all these booths. And you only see the guys' heads pretty much from the head up. And you could realize that a few of them are doing something that they shouldn't be. Well, maybe they should be, because where they were, they're all beating off. They're all getting off. And some of us, I mean, honestly, I think I was more like creeped out by it because I was a very shy person back then, just very introverted. I know my friend Joey was giggling up a storm. Look at that guy's face. I mean, it was funny, but I felt very uncomfortable. I was a very private person, even sexually. I think the closest I ever got as far as having sex with more than one person in the same room, me and my ex-girlfriend would double date with her sister, the same person I told before, her sister and her boyfriend, and we would get like a double hotel room together. We would turn the lights off, put on 107.5 Quiet Storm, I think it was, WBLS with the romantic music, put it up loud so nobody could hear each other. The lights would be off. Nobody could see each other. We'd get under the covers and have fun. That was the closest. But, so yeah, I did go once. Top 3 states that my shows are listened to. Wait, what are the top 3 states that the shows are listened to the least? I couldn't tell you the lowest states, but I could tell you as far as the biggest states, the top 3 that do listen. From the last I looked, which was about a month ago, New York, Pennsylvania, California. Those are the 3. I mean, Illinois was pretty close to 4. And as far as percentages, about 70% of everyone who tunes into my shows, audio only and video, are from the United States. Another 15% is from the UK. You got about 5% from Australia, and then the rest is scattered. But that's pretty much, but I kid you not, there's about like 90 different countries that tune into the show every week. Now, let's be honest. It might only be 100 people. It's funny. I apologize, everybody. All right, we're having some problems, everybody. As I told you at the beginning of the show, we've been having horrible rain here. We've been having horrible... Are we going? Oh, I apologize for this last minute, everybody. All right, now we should be all right. All right, now we should be okay. We're having some internet problems, everybody. Sorry, Crazy Cruiserweight. Probably going to have to wait for your question for the next show. As I said earlier, we're having some heavy rains and heavy winds, and looks like the internet went out literally a minute before we finished. So for everybody on the download, you're not missing much, but... You know, I guess I can answer his question again, but if the internet goes out again, we're going to have to probably just end it now. But he was asking me about the states as tuned into the shows, and I was talking about New York, Pennsylvania, and California being the 3 biggest states. Illinois is a close 4th. But you'd be surprised, like there's like almost 100 countries that have tuned into the shows. I kid you not. I go into demographics for YouTube. And I see all the countries and I'm like, this can't be. And then I go into the audio only demographics and like, yeah, there's that many countries out there. I mean, I never knew that many countries existed, but there's like 80 or 90 at least that have tuned in. Now, yes, some countries, very, very small number of people. But still, the fact that you have people tuning in 10, 15,000 miles away, and then you have JT and others, tuning in like 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, they have yet to go to sleep. I kind of owe you 1,000% effort. I mean, you take the time to spend it with me. I kind of have to deliver. And I got to be straight up and honest with you. I think you deserve nothing less. So anyway, since we got 99% of this show done and the end was a little bit of a hiccup, I'm going to get out of here now. Perfect timing for the show to end. So again, if you want to leave questions for the next show, I will put up a thread in a couple of minutes, and that's where you'll post your question. In fact, I'll even put a link on this thread. I'll even do that. So when you'll see the link pop up on the top. So you click that, you could ask a question for the next show. I'll do it around 2 weeks from now. And that's pretty much it. So everyone, have a great night. All the best. Stay safe. Stay strong, and I thank you as always for the support. Much love as always. Thank you for everybody who sent in great questions for this episode. So I am out of here, and please, post your feedback, your comments. Let me know what you picked up on Black Friday. I'll share some of your let me know what you got on Black Friday. Post it in the comment section. I'll share some of what you posted on the next episode. You could post that here. Post all your feedback here, and I'll share some of it on the next episode. Maybe that's what we'll do from now on. When we do the next episode, we'll open up. On the next episode, we'll open up talking about some of your feedback, and then we'll go from there. So everyone, before this cuts off again,